Grosse. I'm from SoundCloud, and today I will talk about engineering culture. This is the same talk I had at the BadCon 2 or 3 weeks ago. Two main differences: it's in English. Second difference, I only have half of the time I had last time, so I might skip through it very fast or leave out some parts. If you have questions, interrupt me anytime. I think it's better to have a lively discussion for 30 minutes than just me talking. First, some advertisements again. I'm also really excited that KubeCon is coming to Berlin. I think after Buzzwords last year. This is another sign that Berlin is really growing as a IT city. And I personally think that KubeCon Berlin and GOTO Aarhus are some of the best conferences I know. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Who of you doesn't know SoundCloud? Okay, then I cannot skip this slide. SoundCloud is basically for audio what YouTube is for video or Flickr for pictures. You can upload audio, you can share it with other people. You can do all kinds of things, but the basic thing is a sound sharing platform. We have around 15 million users at the moment. We are adding 1.5 million users a month at the moment. And we also have some pretty interesting technology behind it. Where's Stefan? Oh. We also have a hybrid approach with a relational database and a NoSQL store. But this is not the topic of this talk. The topic of this talk is engineering culture. So the first question is, what is that? What is culture? And what does it mean? Does it mean we're doing Scrum or we're doing Kanban? Is that engineering culture? It is part of it, but it's definitely not the culture. So how Wikipedia defines culture is a set of common norms, values, goals, and practices that shape an organization. So it's way more than just, oh, we're kind of agile, we have a Scrum Master, cool. It is way more, and I will talk about what it is and why it is important. So the first big question is only the engineering culture important? And the answer is no, it's the overall culture of a company that is important. And then you need to think about what kind of company that actually is. So are you more a Red Bull type of company? That means the product itself doesn't matter so much, right? I guess nobody can differ Red Bull from something else if you do a blind test. Red Bull is purely about marketing, making deals, and so on. The product behind it is unimportant. Google started as a very cool product, right? So it was the first good search engine on the web, and it's still a very engineering-focused organization. So if Google would provide a crappy product, they would, at least in the early years, I would say they would be out of the market. Now it could be a bit different, but I think that's the first thing. What kind of company are you in? Or are you even? And I was really impressed by Mark Zuckerberg, I have to say. I know there are some things you might not like about Facebook, but having an essay about hacker culture in the IPO documents, I'm not sure who read it. I was deeply impressed by it. There were some analysts saying that they thought, okay, he's immature, you cannot do it. I honestly think that was great, and it showed that he valued the most important thing. Who knows this from his company? I've been on the business for around 20 years, and I've heard this one sentence pretty often. It's about engineering is a big cost driver, features are taking so slow. And the question is, why are features taking slow, and why this perception comes? And often it is that doing growth of a company, mistakes happen. So all engineers are doing mistakes, everybody is doing mistakes. And the question is, how do you react to such mistakes? Do you keep on innovating? Do you keep on moving fast and break things? Or do you put processes around it and slow down things, and in the end, you will have this statement in your company, I'm pretty sure. So these are, for me, the most important parts of an engineering culture. How important is engineering and the product in the company? How much trust is there in engineers? What is the communication like in the company? What's the tone of communication? Something went wrong, the manager thinks, oh, I have to write an email, everything in capital letters, don't do this again, otherwise I will have to do something. What kind of rituals do you have in an organization? I will come to this later. How does your organization look like? Very important for engineering. I'm pretty sure a lot of people from, could be a product department, there can be an engineering department, a QA department, and an operations department. And if you think long enough, you will maybe invent some more departments. And lastly, what kind of processes exist in the company? So I'm not against processes, but they should help people and not hinder them. So maybe a short story from a company I worked at, which showed pretty much failures on both sides. I mean, all this was on TechCrunch, so I think I can tell it. Nokia launched its own app store some years ago, OV Store. They did a big marketing campaign around it. So as engineers, they launched it on a Friday afternoon on 2 servers, and everybody went home. So what happened then? A lot of people tried this thing out, everything crashed, some people were called in, it was a complete disaster, and on TechCrunch there was a bit article about the launch was a complete disaster. What happened then is, oh my God, we have to introduce change management. And the outcome of this was one of the worst things I've ever seen. It was for every little change you wanted to do on production, it could be just a minor bug fix, you had to fill out a big Excel sheet with 7 pages, which was then uploaded to a change management tool, which did cost about €1 million, but they didn't have enough money to customize it, so they used the Excel sheet. So to review a change request, you had to do, I think, 12 mouse clicks. So nobody did it. So nobody looked at it and just say, approve, approve. And this basically showed that, okay, shit happens. I think this kind of error is not really acceptable, but I think there can be other consequences. And on the other hand, was what happened out of it, that people just invented an obscure, an unbelievable process, and I fought against that for how many years? 2 at least, right? Is it still there? No. No? Okay. Cool.
It's pretty lightweight.
Yeah, see. So, importance of engineering is for an engineering culture, I think, a very, very important thing. You have a company. The engineers are the people who actually build the stuff. There might not be all the people who invent what can be done, but they certainly should have input. And in companies which try to create great products, the importance of engineering should be pretty high. We at SoundCloud, we have around 50% of the company in engineering. And even though not everything is perfect, I think engineering still has a big say in what happens on the ground. Trust is the next big issue. Is an engineer allowed to deploy to production without getting 7 approvals or talking to a lot of people or having a long QA process? Does an engineer have access to all the infrastructure components? And so on and so on. I think this is a trust issue. Do we trust people to be responsible and to not completely screw up the system? Communication, I already told you about the big capital letter emails which happen, or don't do this, otherwise I. It should be always like, communication should be in a way of engaging people, for example, we had an outage 2 weeks ago, somebody did something really unfortunate on the database level. I don't want to go into details. Result was a longer outage, and basically the guy, I mean, he already felt really, really bad, but he mostly got, I think, high fives from us to encourage him and to continue. And I know a lot of other companies where this wouldn't have happened. Although we have to change something there. So this is Who works in a company where it looks like that? You? No one? But it's a very common setup. I saw in a lot of companies, and a lot of companies are changing it right now. For example, Immobilien Scout was one-to-one like this, and there were all these departments finger-pointing to each other. So product management was finger-pointing to engineering, they're not fast enough. QA was finger-pointing to engineering, you're doing so many mistakes. PM was finger-pointing to QA, you don't find all the bugs. And ops, well, the only thing they had in mind was uptime, and deployments were, well, not really possible. So, and this also goes hand in hand with trust issues, and I think you can deduct pretty fast from the setup how long it takes to develop a feature from left to right. To get a feature from specification to being done, I would say in this setup you can measure it in months right away. And then it's about processes. What kind of process is this? This is an actual process from, is this PCMI or something? I don't know. How software is being developed, how the whole process looks like from, can I just put a feature on a Kanban board or on a Scrum board and 2 weeks later it's being deployed? Or do I have to talk to 20 stakeholders, do a KPI evaluation, measure the financial success, and after 4 weeks of discussion, it might be on the backlog somewhere. So, but these things unfortunately exist in the IT world, especially in Germany. I will just skip this one. So from an engineering perspective, is it only we are the good guys, engineering are the good guys, are the other ones the bad guys? And I think the obvious answer is no. I've seen a lot of engineering departments which shot themselves in the knees, and they couldn't get anything going anymore. The big question is, overall, what can you do to change this kind of culture? So you're stuck in a bad culture. What can you do to change it? So I think one of the first questions is, what about those guys? So I meant management with that picture. Are they, do they agree that maybe department splits have to go? Maybe that continuous delivery might be a good idea. If they agree, fine, it's going to be a big task. But if they not agree, I mean, what can you do? I mean, and I think there's a lot of stuff engineering can do. I think taking care of code quality, making sure that QA doesn't find any bugs, make sure that the software is easily deployable, and so on. There's a lot of things which you can do to improve it and to lay the foundation that the whole organization looks better. How much time do I have, Gary? Enough? Cool. Then I will start a small rant about Scrum, which was my favorite topic. So there are a lot of processes out there. I think the waterfall times are over, and everybody's doing Scrum now, right? Scrum is a big new thing, and Scrum is the solution to everything. And for me, it's basically this thing. It's mostly hype over substance. Some of the basic ideas are pretty sound, and I don't want to say that everything is bad about Scrum, but in general, it misses a lot of good points. And I've seen a lot of companies who said, oh, I have a Scrum Master, I have a Product Owner, I have a Sprint Planning meeting, I have a Sprint Review meeting, and I have a retrospective. So I'm Agile. And I think this is so far from the truth, it's not even imaginable. And who knows who it is, or who doesn't know who this is? This is Jeff Sutherland. He's one of the inventors of Scrum. And I actually did a Scrum Master training with him, which was 2 days long. And of these 2 days, 1.5 days were marketing and financial success stories and how much money companies saved with doing Scrum. So the basic question is, what is good and what is bad about Scrum? And this heavily depends on where you're coming from. If you're coming from an enterprise waterfallish process, I think Scrum is a great step forward. It will change a lot of things which were wrong. And I suppose that everybody is familiar with Scrum here? Yes, no? Someone. So at least you're doing, hopefully, you deploy once an iteration, you have visibility about what has to be done, you at least compose a team which is not only engineering, but should be also product management and mostly QA. Unfortunately, never ops. If you're coming from a startup and you just deploy stuff, I personally think Scrum is a bad idea. And when you look at Scrum implementation, you see a lot of anti-patterns evolving out of Scrum. So before, maybe you did a big waterfallish approach for 3 months, you did 3 weeks of specification, 4 weeks of implementation, then you did QA, and then you did deployment. And then after 3 months, you deployed something. Now you have Scrum, and sometimes it happens that you have 3 days of specification, you have 3 days of implementation, 3 days of QA, 1 day of deployment, and then you're somehow done. Which is better than before, don't get me wrong, but it's not what is being meant with agile software development. A lot of focus is, like I said before, a lot of focus is put on roles and meetings. There are a lot of Scrum consultants out there who have no idea at all about software engineering and what that means. They just focus, okay, you have these planning meetings, you have a backlog, and then you're agile and you're doing Scrum. And this plays hand in hand with that engineering practices often are not improved.
I don't think these are anti-patterns. I would say if you have those patterns, you aren't doing Scrum right.
I don't say, I mean, yeah, I mean, anti-patterns are not Scrum anti-patterns. That mean, yeah, you can do Scrum right, but in a general software engineering point of view, I would claim that these are anti-patterns. In the Scrum perspective, it might be okay.
But they are not Scrum anti-patterns.
Okay, then it's...
If you not approve, you aren't doing retrospectives. That's an essential part of Scrum. So it's not a Scrum anti-pattern, it's just an anti-pattern.
These are things, so to be clear, these are things I saw a lot on the ground. Not, yeah. So this, I don't say this has to come out of Scrum.
Yeah.
No, this doesn't have to come out of Scrum, but
they aren't doing Scrum the right way.
Yes, and no. There are also some things in Scrum which happen, and I personally don't like. But I think if you do retrospective and you constantly improve and you adapt the process to your needs, you might come to something good. But I always like to look on how things look at the ground and how things are actually being implemented, and not so much looking at the websites and everything sounds good and in theory everything should be fine. And I've seen a lot of these things. Where was I? Okay, engineering practices are often not touched at all, and if you did waterfall before and you have the same engineering practices as before in Scrum, it just won't work. And the operations people are mostly outside of the Scrum teams. It's nothing which is on the Scrum website or something, but it's something I see a lot. I see a lot of that QA is being integrated into the Scrum teams if you need QA. But I've rarely seen that operations is being part of a Scrum team, and that usually means that in a sprint review meeting you show stuff on a demo server and not live. And this is now, I think, one of the core buzzwords in the IT scene, continuous delivery. Everything you do, you just push it out to the public. And how does it feel, how does that fit into Scrum? I mean, there's a sprint review meeting where the product owner is supposed to mark all the tasks as done, but they're all deployed already and used. So this is something which just doesn't fit. Sorry? Feature flags are actually a possibility, yes. But then again, if you look at it and you deploy something on the first day of an iteration, the iteration is 3 weeks long and you just show it to internal people, it's basically lost money, right? You have developed something, it could be okay, and it could be out there. Yeah, but then you don't need a sprint review meeting. So it's more a constant process. So in reality, software development should be a constant process of delivering value. I see it more like a Kanban-ish kind of approach where features move from backlog to done and being deployed right away. So maybe some short words about how we're doing engineering at SoundCloud. Around 50% of our company are engineers. We have a very flat hierarchy. Until I think a week ago, so I was the only manager for 45 people, which is kind of crazy, I have to admit. Sorry? yeah, hopefully good experience. Yeah, but 45 is too many. You don't know what people are doing anymore. Everybody can deploy to live. We give a heads up in IRC, and if nobody objects, then Tomasz deploys at least 3 times a day. We have a very open infrastructure. I think except some of the core routers and core firewalls, everybody can access everything and change nearly everything. Our technical decisions are really very team-driven. We have an architect who has a very strong opinions, but I think most of the day-to-day decisions are being done by the engineers or by the team. And every bigger feature is being reviewed, or not in a bigger feature, but everything which is not the minor bug fix is being reviewed in the pull request, on the Git pull request, so that people can see is the code okay. And sometimes it takes a bit too long to answer those pull requests, but in the end, it's a very good decision. And we have not a single QA role or a single tester in our company. So we have iOS, we have Android, we have mobile websites, we have all kinds of stuff. And we don't have a single QA role in the company. That doesn't mean we don't do QA, right? But we don't have a single QA role. And how that happens is that we're in a very good situation that people at SoundCloud are very passionate about the product. So everybody is constantly using the product. I'm now known in the iOS team as a guy with the shower bugs, because I usually plug my iPhone in a big boombox in the morning, and while I shower, I listen to SoundCloud, and always with the latest alpha version. And I think in the last 3 weeks, I discovered 4 major bugs doing that. And we have a kick-ass community team, which if we don't catch the bug, the community team will be close to our desk pretty soon. Otherwise, we have a lot of rituals in our company, which I think enforces our culture. So we have master classes once a week where people can just talk about whatever. We have the master class about feminism, about electropunk, about whatever. So it's basically people's, sorry?
I didn't understand, is your source code open source?
Sorry?
Is your source code open source? Also when
No.
you say community?
No, community team, sorry, community team is what in Germany is more called a support team. So they interact very closely with our community of users, and they monitor proactively Twitter and everything, and yeah, they give us most of the bug reports who are then on live. Sorry?
Well, we do contribute a fair bit to open source as well.
Yes, but our source code is not open. We have tech talks. We have every Friday we drink beer together. We try to blog very openly about our infrastructure, about what we're doing. The only constraint here is that we don't have enough time to do that. We put a lot of value on team rotation, that people don't stay within the team forever, and there's finger pointing between the teams. Tomasz here, I think, is his 3rd or 4th team now.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah, absolutely. No. And
Team?
sorry?
How many people are in one team?
Like five on average. I think we have smaller teams, but we don't have a team which is bigger than 5, I think. Well, we have 9 to 10 teams now.
This always includes an administrator?
We have people assigned to the team who attend the stand-ups. They're not. We don't have so many. We don't need 10 operations people, and especially not for iOS or Android or the website. But in the backend teams, one guy, we call them system engineer to not have this DevOps, it's just a naming thing. But they are assigned to teams and they attend the stand-ups to see what's going on and to help with all issues.
So if you rotate team members, so like the competitions with the given person, like one is the developer and he's like learning Java or whatever you have in the backend and back. So people are...
Yeah, so nobody is forced to rotate, but everybody can rotate. Obviously, it's not like, oh, tomorrow I'm going to this team, bye. This is not how we do it. So obviously, we have to see, okay, what are the big features here and there, but we usually find an agreement. So until now, I think everything went somehow, not immediately, but...
So you ever faced with a specialist or like push for generalist types of persons?
So we prefer generalists, but we completely see that we need specialists in some areas. So there's, in our anti-spam team, there's a machine learning guy who, I don't understand what he's doing, to be honest. I just hope he's doing the right thing. and you cannot just rotate him to, you might be able to rotate him to something, to another team, but rotate somebody else and replacing him would be a major act. So it's, in general, we try to have generalists, but we see that we need specialists in some areas.
It's more T-shaped, right?
Yeah.
So if you're very broad in your knowledge, but you're very specialized in something.
Yeah, but we also have eyes, I would say,
Okay, yeah.
like our anti-spam guy.
Do you have architects?
We have one architect at the moment.
One.
Yeah,
How many developers?
Hmm?
How many developers?
45.
And is the architect in a team or is he separate?
So the architect is separate. But he's a guy who developed the whole thing in the beginning. So he has very deep knowledge about everything and is very opinionated. And so we won't create a big architecture team. If we promote more people to architects, it will be inside the team.
Just to clarify, you don't have to have any approval from the factory. It's more a consulting thing. So if you're thinking about using Grosse, you go talk to him. He has a lot of experience on that kind of stuff. But we talk to him about work once a month, maybe try something new.
So we have something like the 20% thing at Google has. We call it hacker time. You engineers can take one day off and work on side projects. This can range from people taking machine learning classes at Stanford, people doing iOS hacks, people working on open source projects. And it's actually being used, which is a pretty good thing, because we have a very high workload, I have to admit, and I'm really happy that people just say from time to time, okay, I'm staying home, I'm doing my hacker time projects. Could be more, but at least people are using it.
This other time has to be connected with the business.
It has to be somehow connected with SoundCloud. So if you write software which organize your DVD collection, we don't see it as a hacker time project. If you want to evaluate the latest NoSQL store, yes. So there should be potentially some value to us, but it doesn't have to be something which will land in production.
So do you present?
Yeah, we have, that I forget, we have a company demo every 2 weeks where we demo what the single teams have done. And then people also from time to time demo their hacker time projects.
Okay, another thing, like Google is only like latent, this 20%. They don't really do it because some of the teams are really overloaded. But how it's working, like a lot of is the case like everyone is using this 20% software?
No, not everyone. I made a quick survey and it seemed to me like 50% of the engineers who have been with us longer than 6 months, because in the first months you usually try to get accustomed to everything, are using hacker time. And there's no formality around it. You can just say, but you have to announce it within your team. You go in your team, okay, next Wednesday I'm working on project X. And then if nothing really, really urgent stands against it, then I haven't seen it being rejected so far.
Team decides.
Yeah, so that's the basic thing. We try to put a lot of emphasis on that the single person can decide and see what's best for the team and overall. And it's not like, oh, can I do hacker time? And I have to fill out a document and let it being signed by 3 people.
Another thing, like, do people form groups, like during the similar project, the hacker-like project, or do people work alone?
Also groups. We have a whole team taking part in the KDD Cup. This is this machine learning competition. And that's 5 people working together 1 day in a week and trying to win that competition. I actually don't know how they're doing. Do you?
Actually, we kind of gave up.
They gave up? Oh no. Okay, bad example. So, you know, I was drifting a bit away, but the thing is, the lesson from a lot of companies I've seen and watching them grow and watching them react to mistakes is that most companies become slower while growing. Some of these things are natural because you have to adapt your processes, but some of them, a big part of it is due to introducing top-down processes because people are too afraid to do a mistake, but they're not afraid of being slower. And I think in the end, it's better to do a mistake here and there than to slow down the whole organization and to move responsibility away from the engineer to some abstract processes which exist in this organization. And this is a pattern I've seen in a lot of companies. And I'm really curious to see how a company on the scale of Facebook will evolve over the next years. There are obviously a lot of challenges with keeping that kind of culture, but I personally think that's the way to go. So that was it. Thanks.